G'day. Are you a beginner at drawing or pretty much still at the beginning end of your drawing journey? If you are, these are 5 points that you can't afford not to understand fully. And it's even more important to understand them because you will so often not hear them mentioned anywhere in any context to do with drawing. And yet these 5 points make up very much the foundation on which our drawing depends. In our enthusiasm to have a drawing in our hand, we so often rush past them and start to concern ourselves with drawing techniques, with putting marks and ink or pencil or pen or ink, whatever, on the paper. But if we haven't understood the importance of these things in our mind, we're setting ourselves up for drawings that don't work right. But more frustrating than that, we're setting ourselves up to not be able to understand what our issues are, even when we can identify them. The first one is the most generalized, but also the most important. It's the fundamental one of these 5, and that is we need to understand when we start to learn to draw that the real work, the real learning, all happens in our mind. It's so easy to think that drawing is about learning technical skills. It's about learning how to draw straight lines or curves or how to crosshatch or understanding perspective. And that once we understand these things, it's very simple to put them together and to create a drawing. And if we understand the technical aspects of all of this, then we'll have everything we need to create a great looking drawing. But the truth is, these things are relatively unimportant for our finished drawing compared to all the things that happen in our mind before we pick up the pen. We don't understand that the real challenge in drawing is not putting the lines and the marks on the paper, although at the start that can still be a challenging thing. But the really difficult thing, the truly creative thing that will set my drawing apart from anyone else's, that will work towards creating how my drawings look, my drawing style if you like, that these things all come down to not putting the marks on the paper, but working out what sort of marks I want to put on the paper and where I need to put them and how to combine them with other marks. These are actually the challenging questions that we ask. It's not having the skill to do the straight line, but it's knowing in the first place that this calls for a straight line, and what sort of straight line, and how do I want the straight line to look, and where exactly do I need to place it on the paper, and how do I position it or work it into the other lines and marks I'm putting on the paper. This is the challenge. This is the difficulty. This is the truly creative thing. And this is why it's much easier to copy someone else's drawing than to create my own, because when I copy someone else's line work, I don't need to do any of this truly creative thinking. I just copy their creative thinking. But that's also why then copying other people's drawings doesn't set me up to be able to draw my own, because I haven't learned the fundamental skills of thinking, of observing, of translating my photo or perhaps the scene or the object in front of me into the marks that I'm going to put on the paper. But it's this thinking process, this creative translation of what I see into what I put on my paper, that really is the challenge. This is the fundamental foundational skill I need to learn, and I only learn it by doing it. And if I don't understand this, I may see my drawing weakness or my struggle to know what to put on the paper where as either evidence that I just can't do it, that I'm not talented enough, or I may get frustrated because I think I need to learn technical skills, but they never seem to address this issue when I learn them, instead of realizing that the problem is one that I can address once I understand what it is. And when I look at drawings that have obvious weaknesses, the clearest thing to me is that the person has started to draw, has started to put the pen, the pencil on the paper before they've fully worked out in their mind what they're looking at, what they're trying to draw, what they're hoping to draw, and strategized and maybe even experimented with marks to work out the best way of achieving that on the paper. The second thing I think it's incredibly helpful as a beginner to understand is that my probable experience of drawing as a child has not actually set me up in a helpful way to now take on drawing as an adult with the perhaps greater aims and hopes I have for my drawings than we had for them as children. Our experience as children of drawings is most commonly the highly simplified drawings that we see in children's books and the highly simplified drawings that we're encouraged to draw at school. Most of the time, they centre on a drawing technique of basically a fairly heavy outline that defines the shape of the object that we're drawing in some way, and then we add some detail to that. And while we're probably not wanting to create the same cartoon-like effects that our drawings as a child probably had, because we're often still thinking that to draw is to copy the shapes that we see, is to outline the objects in an accurate way that are in our scene, we do end up with this outline emphasis that unfortunately does still end up creating a cartoon-like way of drawing. It's not that this sometimes isn't an appropriate way to think, but as our primary way of thinking, it's almost certainly not going to capture the sense of realism that we're wanting to have in our drawings. So the third point, what is a more helpful way of understanding the drawing process? For me, certainly, it's been coming to understand that when I draw something, I'm not copying shapes and objects that I see in a photo or in front of me, but instead I'm seeing a certain visual effect. I'm seeing objects that look a certain way because of the angle I'm looking at them from, because of the distance I'm looking at them from, because of the light that's on them at this time of day or this time of year or whatever. And all of these things together create a certain visual effect. They cause this object to look a certain way that would change if any or several of these parameters changed. And when I draw them, I want to capture that effect because it's that effect that creates the sense of realism in life. Well, it doesn't create the sense of realism in life. It actually reflects the realism that we see in life. It reflects the way something looks when we look at it in reality. But in my drawing, I want to capture that effect, that feel, somehow in the way I represent what my subject is on the paper. So if an object is far away, I want to create the visual effect of it being far away. And sometimes when we look at overwhelming detail, such as the leaves on a tree, we don't really see the individual leaves. We can if we try, but generally we see the effect of all the leaves together. So when I draw, if I want my tree to look real, drawing all the leaves can actually make it look less real. But drawing the effect of all the leaves can in fact then capture the visual effect that the tree has when I see it in life. This next point is really important, and that when I'm beginning to draw, it's really important to understand that drawing is a skill to be learned. And if part of the reason I'm starting to learn to draw is that I think I have artistic talent, or I've been told I have artistic talent, or I'm just wondering if I have artistic talent and maybe it's worth me trying, that this is all very unhelpful and unproductive to worry about when I'm learning a skill. When I learn to drive, I'm not thinking, oh, do I have a talent for driving? But rather, I'm learning the skills I need to learn to be able to drive well. And of course, that includes the way I need to think as well about driving. But I'm learning all of those things. I'm not starting thinking, oh, this is worth doing because it's somehow going to be easier for me to do well because I have a natural affinity with driving, I think, and other people may have told me that. And look, drawing is the same. We don't all start in the same place with drawing because we have different life experiences up to our starting point. And some of those have equipped some of us better for the challenges of drawing than other things may have equipped someone else. But we all are learning a skill. We're learning how to think. We're learning how to observe. We're learning how to do this creative translation. And then we're also learning about what sort of marks on the paper are going to create the drawing effect that I'm after. Whether it's realism, photorealism, semi-abstraction, total abstraction, we still have to learn how to put what's in our mind on the paper. And all of these things are skills that we can develop and improve on. If for some reason we're thinking that my learning to draw and to do well at drawing is some sort of natural process that I already have in me, just ready to go, then I'm setting myself up for discouragement and disappointment. This next point flows from the fact that learning is a skill, and that is, don't make the mistake of thinking that if I just draw, if I just keep drawing, I will improve. Now, practice can lead to improvement, but not all practice does. If I keep drawing in unhelpful ways, then merely doing that over and over again will not necessarily change those unhelpful ways and the unhelpful outcomes that I get. I may just be reinforcing bad habits that make it harder for me to actually change at some future point. It's not doing more practice and practicing harder. It really is practicing the right way that improves. And the only way we can practice the right way is to be continually evaluating what we do, to be looking out for things that aren't working, working out why they're not working, and seeking to focus on doing those things differently so that we can improve. Work smarter, not harder, is a bit of a cliche, and we have to work either way. But continuing to do wrong or unhelpful things over and over again will simply entrench them in our drawing. After every drawing, we need to look at it and evaluate, has it worked? And if it hasn't, not to be discouraged by that, because I understand that I'm learning a skill, so therefore I know I don't know everything right now. I know there are still things to learn, but it's to use the things that I can see haven't worked in my drawing to give me that focus of where I need to concentrate and to help me work out what things would be helpful to do now in my drawing to give me more experience of those weak areas so that I can work on them. And that point sets me up nicely for the last one, and that is, I need to understand if I'm learning to draw, if I'm on a self-taught learning journey, that I'm not just learning to draw, I'm not just, if you like, the student, but that I'm also my teacher. If I'm not doing a course that has a teacher, that has a curriculum, that has the material worked out already, has the order in which it's going to be presented and how quickly it's going to be presented and what the student has to do at each part of the course, I'm having to do that. If I don't have a course and I don't have a teacher who looks at my work and who marks it and who shows me the weak spots, who tells me when I can move on, or who tells me when I need to spend a bit more time with something to build a stronger foundation to move on, then I have to do all of those things myself. And I mustn't make the mistake of thinking in this YouTube video age that somehow the videos I'm watching and the artist or the teachers or the creators of those videos are my teachers. They're not. They're presenting information to me, but I'm still choosing the videos I watch. And I have to make the decision, is this a helpful video for me to watch for where I want to end up in my drawing? Are they going to help me get to the point I want to get to in my drawing? Because not all drawing methods, ways of thinking, learning styles, teaching styles are the same. They're not even necessarily compatible. And it's not saying one is better than the other, but they're different. And if we try and do several of these different paths from different teachers at the same time, we're probably going to end up confused, particularly if we don't realize that these different ways of thinking and of drawing don't line up together in a consistent way. And as the teacher, I also have to mark my work. As the teacher, I have to tell myself whether I can move on or whether I need to stay at that place. In fact, I may have to tell myself I need to go down a class. I need to go back to some earlier work and perhaps build a stronger foundation on that before I can comfortably move on to what I'm trying to do now. Or equally, I may tell myself that I'm able to move ahead more rapidly at this point because I've learnt things faster than I thought, and it's put me in a place now where I can move further more effectively than I'd anticipated. Or I may just tell myself I can have a little holiday. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope these thoughts have been helpful. When we start to learn to draw, we're often very impatient to start putting lines on paper. And in my experience, I think the biggest challenge we face learning to draw, starting to learn to draw, is that we underestimate the importance of all the things that happens in our minds before we actually do that, before we actually pick up the pen. And if at least some of these points have helped give a sharper or a clearer focus as to the way ahead, then I'll be happy. But look, whatever you draw, however you draw it, however it turns out, make sure you have fun. Because if we have fun, we can't lose. I'll see you next time. Bye.